Howdy, folks. It's Roby with the Manufactured Mind coming at you today on this beautiful Thursday afternoon, March the 5th, 2026. Today's episode is about gerrymandering, specifically gerrymandering in Virginia, a bipartisan history of rigged maps. Virginia is there's a lot of fucking shit going on in Virginia right now, folks. A lot. You know, in Louisa and across about 7 other counties, I believe it's seven or 9. There's an issue going on where they're bringing in, and I did an episode on this prior to this episode on the Joshua Falls to Yeet 765 kilovolt power line that they want to install, which would be the strongest power line in the country. And of course, they want to install it above ground, which just doesn't make any sense to me. You're installing one of the most powerful power grids, the most powerful power grids in the nation, and you're making it a blatant target by putting it above ground. Not to mention the cancer-causing carcinogenics that will be emitted from the sheer power of the electromagnetic field emitted from these power lines. And then we have the data center issue here in Louisa and all across Virginia. This is like the epicenter of data centers, Virginia. And a lot of community coming together, I'll say that. So, if you're listening and you're from Louisa, I encourage you to go. I believe it is next Thursday, March the 12th at 5:30 p.m. at the Betty Queen Center. They are having a meeting on this 765 kilovolt power line going from Joshua Falls to Yeet. And I encourage everybody and anybody who pays an electric bill in this county to go to this meeting. We need to go there with a sound mind, calm, respectful, peaceful. That is how we get our point across. And let everybody speak their opinion on this respectfully. I think that would have the biggest impact. But anyways, I'm going to talk about today is the gerrymandering, because no sooner than Governor Abigail Spanberger got into office, she immediately allowed men back into women's bathrooms. She stopped allowing the state police to help ICE in removing illegal criminals. And mind you, folks, don't forget that sheerly being here illegally is a crime. Just wanted to make that clear. That is a crime. So that crime alone is a one-way ticket out of here. It's not just the murderers and the rapists. It's if you're here illegally, because that's a crime. And this lady obviously doesn't care about that. She doesn't care about men being in women's bathrooms, which is quite fucking astonishing to me, being that she's a woman. Well, at least I think she is. Her actions are making that rather questionable, to be quite honest. But anyways, and then she's slowly trying to erode away our Second Amendment rights by banning assault weapons, which they're just weapons. The person that's using them would be the assaulter, not the weapon. So she's trying to ban AR-15s. She's trying to ban 30-round magazines, which they already have, I do believe. Or they want to take it down to 15. They try to take it down to 10 rounds, and I think they got defeated. So now they're trying to do 15, I believe. Crazy shit, man. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it. I mean, this makes me want to fucking leave the state and move. And quite frankly, that's what I'm looking to do. But let's talk about this gerrymandering, because this is some rigged shit right here. Completely rigged. And it happens on both sides. But right now, present day, it's happening on the Democratic side. And it's happening in more than just Virginia. They're doing it in fucking California. They're trying to do it in Texas. And I'm sure many other places. Because they want to win the midterms and attempt to impeach President Trump. It's completely insane. And quite sickening. This lady's obviously riddled with TDS. Trump derangement syndrome. But anyways, Virginia sits at the epicenter of America's redistricting wars. In just 6 years, the state has cycled from voter-approved reform to commission deadlock to court-drawn maps praised as among the nation's fairest, and now to a Democratic pushback for what analysts call the most aggressive congressional gerrymander any state has attempted in current cycle. The story is not one of a single guilty party. Democrats gerrymandered Virginia for decades when they controlled the legislature. Republicans racially gerrymandered it after 2010, and now Democrats are seeking to override the commission process that 65.7% of voters endorsed in 2020. As of March 5th, 2026, today, early voting begins on an April 21 referendum that could reshape Virginia's congressional map from 6 Democratic seats and 5 Republican seats to 10 Democratic seats and 1 Republican seat. That's fucking insane. They just don't give a shit about, they don't even try to hide it, do they? They're just outright obvious with it. It wasn't good enough to have 1 more than 5 Democrats. They've got to have 9 more. 5 Republicans. It wasn't good enough to have 1 more than 5 Republicans. You have to have 9 more than 1 Republican. It's absurd. But this is even as the Virginia Supreme Court has yet to rule on whether the entire process is constitutional. I would argue that it's not constitutional. So from Patrick Henry to the Byrd machine, Democrats drew the lines for generations. Virginia's gerrymandering pedigree is older than the Republic. In 1789, Patrick Henry drew Virginia's first congressional district specifically to prevent James Madison from winning a seat. For much of the 20th century, the Byrd organization, that's BYRD, the conservative Democratic machine, led by Henry F. Byrd Sr., maintained power through a combination of voter suppression, poll taxes, literacy test under the 1901 Constitution, and systematic malapportionment, that overrepresented rural areas at the expense of growing suburbs. Following the 1960 census, Governor J. Lindsay Almond appointed a bipartisan redistricting commission, but rural Democratic legislators rejected its proposals and enacted token plans. Northern Virginia, then a Republican stronghold, received only half the representation increase its population growth warranted. The U.S. Supreme Court intervened in Davis versus Mann, 1964, ruling that neither chamber of the General Assembly was, quote, apportioned sufficiently on a population basis to be constitutionally sustainable. And in the 1990s, produced Virginia's most visually notorious gerrymander, the 3rd Congressional District, drawn by a Democratic-controlled legislator as a bizarre shape stretching across the state, variously described as a grasping claw or squashed salamander. to create a majority-minority district with over 60% black voting age population. A federal court struck it down as an unconstitutional racial gerrymander in Moon versus Meadows, 1997, finding the state had prioritized race over every traditional redistricting criterion. Democratic gerrymandering in this era was characterized by three patterns: rural malapportionment to protect the conservative Democratic establishment, bipartisan incumbent protection deals and congressional maps under divided government, and racial gerrymandering in the 1990s that concentrated black voters into bizarrely shaped districts. As redistricting scholars Mika Altman and Michael McDonald documented in the Richmond Law Review 2013, an independent commission following strict criteria would have modestly benefited Republicans, evidence that Democratic-drawn maps had tilted the playing field for decades. And so the 2011 Republican gerrymander and the courts that undid it. Republicans' opportunity came after the 2010 census, although Virginia had divided legislative control in 2011. Republicans held the House of Delegates while Democrats controlled the Senate. Each party essentially drew maps for its own chamber, and Governor Bob McDonnell vetoed the initial package for excessive partisanship. The critical movement arrived in November of 2011 when Republicans gained two state Senate seats, giving them unified control through Lieutenant Governor Bill Bowling's tie-breaking vote. With full control, the General Assembly passed HB 251 on January 20, 2012, and McDonnell signed it 5 days later. The manipulation was surgical. Republicans packed black voters into Bobby Scott's 3rd Congressional District, dramatically increasing its black voting age population while bleaching surrounding districts. The result was an 8-3 Republican advantage in a state Barack Obama carried in both 2008 and 2012. In the 2012 election, Republican congressional candidates won only 70,736 more votes statewide than Democrats out of 3.7 million cast, yet held 8 of 11 seats. For the House of Delegates, Delegate Chris Jones led the redistricting effort and imposed a one-size-fits-all 55% black voting age population floor across 12 majority-minority districts. Districts that had previously varied in their minority populations. Jones argued this threshold was necessary for Voting Rights Act compliance. A majority of the Legislative Black Caucus initially signed off. Both gerrymanders were ultimately struck down in landmark court cases. And I would argue that they're attempting to gerrymander now to redraw the lines to where they know there are a more illegal populace in certain areas. I guarantee you that the Democrats know where that's at. They know where they are. And they're going to redistrict it so that they get those votes. Because that's what it's all about, folks. I mean, it's so clear. If you can't see that, then you need to pull the wool back from over your eyes. They have completely lost their voter base. Mind you, the Democratic presidential candidates, the number one slot right now is Gavin Newsom at 19%, followed by, I believe, AOC at like 17%. That's low as shit. Both of them. The first seat is running at 19%, folks. That means that his own party doesn't want him in there. They have nothing. They have no one. Their voter base is gone. They've all shifted to common sense, or stuck with common sense, rather. And all they have to rely on is illegals. So by allowing illegals to come into this country, that means that they're going to vote for them because they let them into the country. And the sooner you realize this, the better off you'll be. Trust me. So, Personobula versus Alcorn Congressional. A three-judge panel ruled in October 2014 that the 3rd Congressional District was motivated purely by race. After the legislature failed to agree on a remedy, Special Master Bernard Groffman drew a new map approved in January 2016. The redrawn 4th District elected Democrat Donald McEachin in 2016, reducing the Republican edge from 8-3 to 7-4. And then Bethune Hill versus Virginia State Board of Elections, House of Delegates. This case traveled twice to the Supreme Court. In the first hearing of Bethune Hill versus Virginia Board of Elections, 580 U.S. decided March 1, 2017, Justice Kennedy wrote for a 6-2 majority that the district court applied an incorrect legal standard. Race can predominate even without an actual conflict with traditional redistricting criteria on remand. The district court found all 11 remaining districts were unconstitutional racial gerrymanders in a 2-1 decision. Delegate Jones, deemed credible at the first trial, was found not credible at the second, a discrepancy Chief Justice Roberts flagged as the elephant in the room. The second Supreme Court hearing, decided June 17, 2019, produced an unusual 5-4 coalition. Ginsburg, Thomas, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Gorsuch ruled the House of Delegates lacked standing to appeal because Attorney General Mark Herring, Democrat, had declined to defend the maps. The remedial map drawn by Groffman stood, and Democrats won the House of Delegates that November for the first time since '93. Professor Larry Sabato had predicted the remedial map would nearly guarantee a Democratic takeover, and that's what I'm predicting now with this gerrymandering that's happening today. If that goes through, this is what's going to happen. Nearly guaranteed Democratic takeover. And that means that I'm leaving. 100%. Might take me a couple years, but I'm leaving. The Voting Rights Act shaped Virginia redistricting for 60 years. Virginia was one of the 7 original states covered entirely under Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Coverage was triggered by the state's maintenance of a literacy test and voter participation below 50% in the 1964 presidential election. Every voting changed, including redistricting plans, required federal preclearance before implementation. This preclearance requirement both constrained and enabled manipulation. It prevented the most egregious forms of minority vote dilution, but also gave map drawers a convenient justification. Republicans in 2011 cited VRA compliance as the primary reason for the 55% BVAP floor, a claim the courts ultimately rejected. The DOJ cleared the 2012 congressional map on March 14, 2012, a decision later effectively overridden by the courts. And after Shelby County versus Holder 2013 struck down the coverage formula and effectively ended preclearance, Virginia became the first former covered state to enact its own state-level Voting Rights Act, HB 1890, signed March 31, 2021, restored local preclearance requirements, added state protections for racial and language minorities, and provided enhanced protection against vote dilution. Notably, between 1984 and 2009, all jurisdictions nationwide that successfully bailed out of Section 5 coverage were located in Virginia. 196 jurisdictions through 38 bailout actions, reflecting the state's unique trajectory on voting rights. The commission was built to compromise, but designed to deadlock. The 2020 constitutional amendment creating the Virginia Redistricting Commission has one of the most complex origin stories in modern redistricting reform. Its bipartisan passage masks a paradox. Different parties supported it for diametrically opposed strategic reasons. The amendment. Article 2, Section 6 and 6A created a 16-member body, 8 legislators, 2 from each party in each chamber, appointed by party leaders, and 8 citizens, selected by a committee of 5 retired circuit court judges. Maps required submajority approval, 6 of 8 legislators and 6 of 8 citizens, meaning just 2 members from one party could block any map. If the commission failed, the Virginia Supreme Court would draw the maps. The legislative journey exposed a dramatic partisan reversal. In 2019, when Republicans still controlled the House, the amendment passed its first reading 85-13 in the House and 39-1 in the Senate. Overwhelming bipartisan support. Senator George Barker and Delegate Mark Cole were lead sponsors, and Barker was Democrat, Cole was Republican. Senator Schuyler Van Valkenburg, a Democrat, a high school government teacher, made redistricting reform his signature issue. One Virginia 2021, led by Executive Director Brian Cannon, ran the grassroots campaign. Then, Democrats won their trifecta in November of 2019. And everything shifted. When the amendment required its constitutionally mandated second passage in 2020, the House vote plummeted to 54-46. All Republicans and only 9 Democrats voted yes. Excuse me. 46 Democrats voted no. Crucially, 14 of 15 members of the Legislative Black Caucus opposed it. House Speaker Eileen Filler-Corn. Oh man, I hate to laugh, but what kind of name is that? Eileen Filler-Corn. Sorry, that's funny. Well, Filler-Corn reversed her 2019 vote, citing the amendment's failure to quote, to prevent politicization, end quote. Delegate Latrice Aird called it fundamentally flawed. Delegate Marcus Simone offered a substitute, creating an 11-member truly independent commission with no legislators. It was rejected 47-53. The strategic calculus was transparent. Republicans, facing potential long-term minority status, calculated that a deadlocked commission would hand redistricting to the Virginia Supreme Court, whose justices were selected by the legislature during decades of Republicans, or split control. Democrats, having just gained unified power, suddenly had every incentive to draw maps themselves. As Michael Lee of the Brennan Center observed, quote, the process is very easy to deadlock, and sometimes deadlock can be an objective in and of itself. Despite Democratic leadership opposition, voters approved the amendment on November 3rd, 2020, with 2,770,489 yes votes, 65.69%. It won a majority in every county and independent city except Arlington. Supporters included former Republican Governor George Allen, former Attorney General Eric Holder, and Senator Tim Kaine, and a broad coalition of civic organizations. And so, moving on to how the commission imploded in 16 weeks. The commission's failure was both predictable and preventable. It held its first meeting on January 21, 2021, but the structural problems became apparent immediately. On June 7th, commissioners voted 10-4 to hire 2 sets of partisan attorneys, and map consultants rather than a single nonpartisan team, a decision that guaranteed competing or competing maps rather than collaborative drawing. The deepest fissure concerned race. Democrats, represented by counsel J. Gerald Hebert and mapping consultant Ken Strasma, argued race should be a, quote, central consideration, prioritizing, quote, opportunity districts. Opportunity districts meaning the illegals that's going to vote for them, because that's the only voting stance they have is illegals. They've lost everybody. Their ratings are trash. It is the lowest it has ever been. I can't believe this lady won, bro. Like, actually I can. Because every time, whatever the president's party is, Virginia usually goes in the opposite direction. But man, I pray that they do not get by with this freaking 10-1 gerrymandering fucking scam that they're trying to run. And, you know, you can't expect anything else from a Governor Scamburger. I mean, Spanburger. Damn, that word just keeps slipping out. Scamburger. It says, so I said, opportunity districts where voters of color make up roughly 45 to 50% of the electorate. Republican counsel H. Christopher Bartolomucci and mapper John Morgan contended that maintaining some majority black districts was sufficient. On September 16th, the commission deadlocked 8-8 on this question, a fault line that never healed. The implosion came on October 8th, 2021. Democrats proposed a compromise, used the Republican-drawn House map and the Democratic-drawn Senate map as starting points. Republicans rejected it. Democratic co-chair Greta Harris walked out saying, "I don't feel as though all members on the commission are sincere in their willingness to compromise." The walkout deprived the commission of a quorum. Republican co-chair Mackenzie Babachenko later acknowledged a fundamental lack of trust of each other's motives. The commission missed its October 10 deadline for state legislative maps and its October 25th deadline for congressional maps, triggering the constitutional fallback. All map drawing authority transferred to the Virginia Supreme Court. Court-drawn maps received the nation's highest fairness grades. The Virginia Supreme Court appointed two special masters on 19 November 2021. Bernard Groffman, Democratic nominee, a UC Irvine political science professor who had previously served as a special master in two Virginia redistricting cases, and Sean Trent, Republican nominee, senior elections analyst for Real Clear Politics and visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Democrats initially objected to Trent's conservative associations. What? Why? Their fucking guy was associated. What the hell? The pair released draft maps on December 8th, and the court unanimously adopted final maps on December 28th, 2021. In their 63-page accompanying memo, the special masters wrote, "We drew maps which did not unduly favor either party. These maps came about as part of a partisan and incumbency blind process based on good government map making." They stated politics, quote, "were not even discussed until after the initial drafts." Independent analysis validated their work. The Princeton Gerrymandering Project gave Virginia's congressional maps an overall A grade, with an A for partisan fairness, one of only 4 states nationwide, alongside Arizona, Colorado, and Michigan, to receive top marks, all 4 drawn by commissions of courts rather than legislators. The 6 Democrats, 5 Republicans congressional split in the 2022 elections matched the special master's projections and closely mirrored Virginia's partisan composition. Biden won the state by 10 points in 2020. The state Senate maps received a B overall, downgraded primarily for low competitiveness. One Virginia's 2021's Liz White called them, quote, definitely the best maps we've seen in Virginia in a long time. It's the first set of maps that haven't been drawn at all by any member of the legislature, end quote. The maps were first used for congressional elections in 2022 and for state legislative elections in 2023, when Democrats won majorities in both chambers. Democrats now seek to override the maps voters chose. I'll repeat that again. Democrats now seek to override the maps that voters chose. The current chapter represents a dramatic reversal. In October 2025, Virginia Democrats, now holding a trifecta after Abigail Scamberger's gubernatorial victory, launched an effort to amend the Constitution to allow mid-decade congressional redistricting. The trigger, President Trump encouraged Republican-controlled states to redraw maps, and Texas, Missouri, and North Carolina complied. On October 27, 2025, the House of Delegates voted 50-42 to expand a special session to include constitutional amendments. Folks, this is childish as fuck. If that's the reason for her doing this, that's childish as fuck. Why? Because 2 wrongs don't make a right. Okay? If you think that that's wrong for Trump to do it, don't stoop down to that level then if you think that's wrong. If you truly think that's wrong, then why don't you stand above it and just don't do the same thing? Why do you gotta get grimy? 2 wrongs don't make a right. I'm not saying Trump's right or wrong. But if she thinks that it's wrong, then you're stooping to that level. You feel what I'm saying? You know, we're taught as kids 2 wrongs don't make a right. Well, clearly that's out the fucking window. That's childish as fuck. And that's on her. Childish as fuck. What do you expect? See, and what I'm about to say is going to inevitably piss some people off, but here it goes. You know, my biggest fear, and I have nothing against women. I love women. But the fact of the matter is, women are very emotional. Okay? Women often make decisions based on pure emotion. More so than men. More so than any sound man, at least. And this is what I feel like is a clear example of that. She's acting out of pure emotion. This is why I don't think that this job should be held by her. No, I'm not a misogynist, for God's sakes, before anybody goes off on that freaking tangent. Get that out of your mind. I'm just stating facts, man. And the data is backing me up. It's basically confirming that. Is it not? This is ridiculous, folks. Absolutely ridiculous. So on October 27th, 2025, the House of Delegates voted 50-42 to expand a special session to include constitutional amendments. The next day, Delegate Rodney Willett, Democrat in Henrico, introduced H.J.R. 6007, which would allow the General Assembly to conduct congressional redistricting between January 1, 2025 and October 31st, 2030. If any other state redraws its maps outside the decennial cycle, the amendment passed the House 51-42 and Senate 21-16 on party lines. After the constitutionally required second passage in January 2026, House 62-33, Senate 21-18, the measure was set for an April 21, 2026 referendum. Democrats then released their proposed map In HB 29, the caboose budget bill, the map is extraordinary in its ambition: 10 Democratic-leaning seats and 1 Republican seat. Absurd. VA 9, far southwest Virginia. 5 districts originate in densely populated Northern Virginia with fingers reaching deep into rural areas. The Shenandoah Valley would be carved into 4 different congressional districts. 48% of Virginians would be moved to a new district. Cardinal News analysis found the proposed map would be the most aggressive gerrymander of any other state. Of course, like I said, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And here you have a clear example of this. Like I said, whether Trump is right or wrong in encouraging the gerrymandering to take place is another story. But if this lady, Scamberger, thinks that it is wrong of him to do that, you don't double down and do what the other person does. That makes you look weak. And it shows that you're just acting purely out of emotion, which is not the mindset to have when you're a freaking governor. Get with the program. Come on. For real. So, the most aggressive gerrymander of any other state in the current cycle, targeting 36% of the delegation for flipping, more than double any other redistricting state. Sabato's crystal ball projected Democrats should win at least 8 of its seats in 2026 and quite possibly 10. Governor Scamberger's positioning has been carefully calibrated. During her campaign, she stated, quote, "I have no plans to redistrict Virginia." As governor, she signed the referendum bill in HB 29, but framed her role as, quote, "letting the voters decide." Yeah, okay. And, quote, "being responsive in the face of efforts across country to change maps." See? There you go. She just admitted it. There you go. Right there. Being responsive in the face of efforts across the country to change maps. Stooping to that level. Just because somebody else is doing something doesn't mean that you have to stoop to that level and do it too. If you think that it's a level of stooping, if you think that Trump is wrong in doing what he's done, then why are you stooping to that level? Plain and simple. Because you're acting out of emotion, lady. That's why. Because you can't hold it together. You're fucking panicking. Desperate. Fucking desperate. It's fucking insane, man. She clearly lies. Obviously, "I have no plans to redistrict Virginia." Oh, yeah. Let the voters decide. Well, I bet the voters wouldn't decide on a 10-1 fucking Democratic seat. Fucking bullshit. She has never specifically or explicitly endorsed the 10-1 map. Of course she hasn't. She's hiding behind her words. She's pulling the manipulative fucking card, folks. It's clear as day. And if you can't recognize that, then you probably shouldn't even be voting. Her initial hesitancy may have softened after the NDRC donated $150,000 to her campaign and $150,000 to the House Democratic Caucus one day before Democrats called the special session. How convenient. House Speaker Don Scott has been direct. Quote, "Virginia has to fight back. We can't stand by and do nothing." End quote. Senate President pro tempore Luis Lucas responded to Senator Ted Cruz's criticism with, quote, "You all started it, and we fucking finished it." Again, acting out of emotion. You all started it, and we fucking finished it. Oh my God. It's really sad to see adults acting like this. He hit me first. That's what it sounds like to me. That's what this sounds like. He hit me first. Nuh-uh. They hit me first. They hit me first. It's fucking childish, bro. Stooping to the level. Stooping to another level. A lower level. It just shows how immature they really are. Legal battles are far from over. The Republican counteroffensive has been fierce and multi-pronged. On October 28, 2025, the same day HJR 6007 was introduced, Senator Ryan McDougal, Senator Bill Stanley, House Minority Leader Terry Kilgore, and former Redistricting Commissioner Virginia Trost Thornton filed suit in Tazewell County Circuit Court on January 27, 2026. Chief Judge Jack Hurley Jr. ruled the amendment unlawful on 3 grounds. The special session was improperly expanded. The amendment was introduced after more than 1 million people had already voted in the 2025 general election, and the 90-day publication requirement was not met. Democrats noted that Hurley had run for the House of Delegates as a Republican in 1999. Get the fuck out of here, man. Oh my God, this shit pisses me off. I'm sorry, folks. Stay calm. It's annoying, bro. Like, for real. Like, this is childish and manipulative, and it's fucking crooked. It's just flat out crooked. It's insane. This lady is destroying this fucking state. The Democrats are destroying the fucking state. I don't want to live in a state where men are allowed to go in a woman's fucking bathroom, bro. That is fucking disgustingly wrong to me. And how could a woman of all people, allow that? It's, oh my God, bro. It's like they do this shit just in spite of Trump. That's literally what they're doing, in spite of Trump, because they have TDS. And that's real, folks. TDS is a very real thing, and it's exactly what this is. A second suit was filed on February 19 by the Republican National Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee, Representative Ben Cline, and Representative Morgan Griffith, alleging the ballot language, "Restore Fairness," is misleading and the amendment violates the single subject rule. Judge Hurley granted a temporary restraining order blocking election preparations. The Virginia Supreme Court has intervened twice, on February 13 and March 4, 2026, to allow the referendum to proceed, not the outcome. Or, I'm sorry, let me back up. I skipped a sentence there. To proceed while it reviews the underlying legality. The court's key statement, quote, "It is the process, not the outcome of this effort that we may ultimately have to address. Issuing an injunction to keep Virginians from the polls is not the proper way to make this decision. Critically, the court has not ruled on the merits. Its briefing schedule extends to April 23rd, meaning the final ruling may come after April 21st. Vote, potentially avoiding a referendum on which $5.2 million in public funds and nearly $20 million in campaign spending have already been committed. The constitutional question at heart of the case is whether Article Article 12's requirement for an intervening general election between 2 passages of an amendment was satisfied, given that early voting had already begun before the amendment's second passage. Former Attorney General Jason Myers, Republican, issued a non-binding opinion that the process was unconstitutional. Fuck yeah, it is. Currently, Attorney General Jay Jones, Democrat, takes the opposite view. Isn't Jay Jones the guy who threatened to kill a colleague and his kids? I'm pretty sure that's the same Jay Jones. Yep, that's him. And why is he still in a fucking... How is he an attorney general when you make threats like that, bro? This system is so fucking corrupt. It really pisses me off, bro. It really does. Excuse me. Virginia's commission compared to the national gold standards. Virginia's redistricting commission is structurally unique and uniquely flawed. It is the only commission in the country where legislators constitute half the membership. California, Arizona, Michigan, and Colorado all bar sitting elected officials from serving. All bar sitting elected officials from Oh, I see. I got you. Sorry. So California, Arizona, Michigan, and Colorado all bar sitting elected officials from serving. That's what it says. Virginia also requires legislative up or down approval of maps, though no amendments are permitted, whereas the gold standard commissions produce final maps without legislative review. The supermajority requirement, 6 of 8 in each group, created an inherent veto for any 2 members of one party, a structural vulnerability no other commission shares. California requires 9 of 14 votes, including members from both major parties plus independents. Michigan requires a majority, including at least 2 members from each party plus 1 unaffiliated. The presence of unaffiliated tiebreaker members is the key feature Virginia lacks. You know, that's fucking sad when California is better at this than us. And California is a shithole. Look what California is at right now, folks. That's a preview of what's to come in Virginia if this keeps up. 100%. 100%. California and New York is a preview of what is to come if this shit continues. If this passes, if this goes through, that's what we're looking at, folks. Yep. The American Bar Association, in a post-mortem analysis, identified Virginia and New York as examples of commission failure due to structural defects. The Brennan Center's Michael Lee noted that Virginia's even partisan split makes deadlock very easy, and that there's no incentive to compromise if your party thinks the alternative process will be better. Virginia justices are selected by direct legislative appointment, a method shared only with South Carolina. There is no popular election and no gubernatorial nomination. This means the court's composition reflects the political balance of the legislator at the time of each appointment. A 2012 Stanford study gave the court a relatively centrist ideological score. A score of 0.11, the 18th most conservative state Supreme Court. But the composition shifts as legislative control changes. The current Chief Justice is Cleo E. Powell, the first African-American woman in that role, who took office in January 1, 2026. Nationally, Republicans gerrymander more, but Democrats are catching up fast. Again, 2 wrongs don't make a right. The data on national gerrymandering asymmetry is clear but nuanced. A Brennan Center analysis 2024 found Republican gerrymandering produced a net 16-seat advantage in the U.S. House compared to fair maps. 23 extra GOP-leaning seats in Republican-drawn maps versus 7 extra Democratic-leaning seats in Democratic-drawn maps. Republicans controlled redistricting for 177 congressional districts versus just 49 for Democrats. An AP analysis 2017 found 4 times as many states with Republican-skewed state legislative districts as Democrat-skewed ones. Academic research confirms the pattern. Professor Nicholas Stephanopoulos, Harvard, found that unified Republican control of redistricting produced a 5.5 percentage point swing in the efficiency gap versus 3.4 for Democratic control. The Brennan Center also noted a crucial asymmetry. Large Democratic favoring skews have been mostly corrected through legal review. Republican favoring skews have almost uniformly remained uncorrected. The 2025-26 mid-decade redistricting wave is unprecedented. Professor Stephanopoulos called it totally unprecedented in the modern era. You have to go back to the Gilded Age to see this much discretionary redrawing of maps. Before 2025, only 2 states had conducted voluntary mid-decade redistricting since 1970. Now the list includes Texas, net plus 5 Republican seats, North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, California, where voters approved Proposition 50, allowing a legislator-drawn map, and Virginia. The most notorious examples remain in structure are instructive for Virginia comparisons. North Carolina's gerrymandered 2024 map produced a 10 Republican, 4 Republican delegation despite the state being closely divided. Ohio's Redistricting Commission defied its own state Supreme Court 5 times, resubmitting maps already found unconstitutional. Wow. Wisconsin's extreme 2011 gerrymander persisted until a liberal state Supreme Court majority struck it down in December 2023. Maryland's Democratic gerrymander produced a 7 Democrat, 1 Republican delegation in a roughly 60-40 Democrat state. Virginia's 2012 gerrymander, which Sam Wang of the Princeton Electoral Innovation Lab identified as giving Republicans 2 extra seats, was part of what he called the Great Gerrymander of 2012, a nationwide Republican effort that produced a net 20-seat advantage. So, follow the money on both sides of Virginia's redistricting wars. The financial infrastructure behind Virginia's redistricting fights reveals the deep involvement of national organizations on both sides. The National Democratic Redistricting Committee, the NDRC, founded in late 2016 by former Attorney General Eric Holder, with support from President Obama, has invested heavily in Virginia. In 2017, it spent $1.2 million on Ralph Northam's gubernatorial campaign and $250,000 in digital ads targeting minority and young voters, reasoning that the governor would have veto power over post-2020 maps. In October 2025, the NDRC donated $300,000, $150,000 to Spanberger's campaign, $150,000 to the House Democratic Caucus, and one day before Democrats called the redistricting special session, total 2025 Virginia donations reached $730,200 per VPAP data. The NDRC registered as the official committee supporting the April 2026 ballot measure. On the pro-amendment side, Virginia's for Fair Elections has received nearly $20 million from Democrat-aligned groups, including a $5 million contribution from House Majority Forward, a 501c4, quote, dark money organization that is not required to disclose its donors. The group has spent $5.3 million on advertising and launched a $2.7 million 2-week television blitz across Virginia's 6 media markets. The Republican side is organized through Virginia's for Fair Maps, led by former Attorney General Jason Myers, and backed by the RNC and NRCC through their lawsuit. Historically, the Republican State Leadership Committee's Red Map project invested $30 million nationally in the 2010 cycle to flip state legislators before redistricting. Ed Gillespie, who later ran for governor and Senate in Virginia, headed the RSLC during Red Map and collected over $700,000 in consulting fees. At a March 2011 gala at Philip Morris Altria headquarters, Gillespie celebrated that Republicans now control the redrawing of at least 47 of 70 competitive congressional districts. Perhaps the most revealing indicator of the current moment, Brian Cannon, who led One Virginia 2021 successful campaign for the 2020 redistricting amendment, now leads, quote, No Gerrymandering Virginia, end quote, a bipartisan group opposing the April 2026 referendum. His advisory committee includes former Republican Governor George Allen, former House Speaker Bill Howell, and former Democratic Senator Chap Peterson. Cannon has pointedly noted, I don't have anyone in D.C. offering me $5 million to gaslight Virginia voters like the other side does. Mic drop. So was the commission designed to fail, and does the current push prove it? The, quote, designed to fail thesis has 2 versions. Both contain elements of truth. The structural version holds that the commission's 8-to-8 partisan split submajority requirements and court fallback made deadlock virtually inevitable. Delegate Mark Levine, Democrat, warned during the 2020 debate that requiring only 2 legislators to shelve the commission map drawing power could devolve quickly to the Virginia Supreme Court. This prediction proved accurate. The Commission's decision to hire two sets of partisan consultants rather than one partisan team or one nonpartisan team guaranteed a competing maps. Every other successful redistricting commission in the country includes unaffiliated tiebreaker members. Virginia's does not. There's no independent. The strategic version holds that both parties supported the amendment for cynical reasons. Republicans facing potential long-term minority status after the 2019 Democratic sweep calculated that even if they lost a legislator, they could deadlock the commission and let the Republican-appointed Supreme Court draw maps. Democrats who supported the amendment in 2019 may have calculated that reform was popular and that the fallback to the court was an acceptable risk. When Democrats gained the trifecta, many reversed course, but the amendment was already on its way to voters. The current mid-decade redistricting push adds a third dimension. Senator von Valkenburg, the amendment's principal author, now supports the exception, saying, quote, "If I thought any of those crucial reforms we fought for were in danger, I would be a no vote. But that's not what this is," end quote. Critics see this as exactly what opponents feared, that the commission process would be treated as disposable when it proved inconvenient. And that's exactly what's happening. The connection to national Democratic strategy is explicit. NDRC President John Bassignano said the proposal map, quote, "increases the number of competitive districts," a characterization that strains credulity for a 10-to-1 map. PBS News reported that Virginia's redistricting plan has become a key part of Democrats' national strategy to try to offset potential Republican gains from Texas, North Carolina, and Florida. The national math, Republicans could gain approximately 9 seats from mid-decade redistricting. Democrats could gain approximately 5 from California and 4 from Virginia. So, what Virginia voters actually think and what this means for democracy. Polling reveals a public that supports fair maps but is being asked to choose sides in a partisan arms race. A Roanoke College poll, February 2026, found 62% support the current commission-based redistricting method and 52% would vote to keep the current system versus 44% supporting a Democratic proposal. A Christopher Newport University poll found 2/3 preferred districts drawn without favoring either party, but more than 1 in 5 who believe gerrymandering is wrong are ready to make an exception this year to counter President Trump. Get the fuck out of here, man. See? Stupid to the level that they think is wrong. Says a lot about them, doesn't it? The academic research on gerrymandering's effects provides the sobering context. Only 27 House districts nationally were rated competitive heading into 2024, and 3/4 of those decided by narrow margins were drawn by courts or commissions, not partisan legislators. Research by Kohi Tosanovich and Warsaw 2017 found that a 1 standard deviation shift in the efficiency gap produced a roughly 0.4 standard deviation shift in the ideology of the median state legislator. Meaning, so gerrymandering doesn't just affect who wins, but what policies get enacted. Bowler and Donovan, 2025, found that partisan gerrymandering, quote, undermines the belief that elections are fair, a cornerstone of democratic legitimacy, end quote, and that Americans view it with the same disdain they reserve for bribery. Virginia-specific political scientist Nicholas Goldert at Virginia Tech has noted that the current court-drawn maps are rather fair and that even without redistricting, they could be in a good Democratic year result in as large as an 8-3 Democratic majority. The proposed 10-1 map, by contrast, would make competitive elections nearly impossible in 10 of 11 districts, regardless of which party benefits. Some Democratic dissenters have made the most compelling case against their own party's effort. Veteran Democratic strategist Kevin Harris and Richard McDaniel wrote in the Washington Informer, quote, Virginia Democrats should reject the April's redistricting referendum, uphold the fair maps Virginia's already chose, end quote. Brian Cannon warned that if Democrats gerrymander Virginia while Republicans rig Florida, Missouri, and North Carolina, the net effect is zero. A few seats change hands, but the country loses competitive elections. What did I say? You can't stoop to the other person's level, no matter who you are. You don't do that. Two wrongs don't make a fucking right. Damn. This gerrymandering should be illegal. This shouldn't even be allowed for either side. That's my take on it. And so the conclusion, folks, is that the arms race that fair maps couldn't survive. Virginia's redistricting saga encapsulates a national tragedy of collective action. The state achieved something rare, genuinely fair maps, drawn by independent experts, validated by nonpartisan analysis, and producing election results that mirror the electorate. The Princeton gerrymandering project's A grade was not a technicality. It reflected maps that gave both parties a realistic chance of winning seats proportional to their vote share. But they don't want to keep that because they're fucking greedy. The achievement lasted exactly one redistricting cycle. The lesson is not that the commissions don't work. Virginia's court-drawn maps proved they can, but that no state-level reform can survive a national gerrymandering arms race. When Texas redraws mid-decade to gain 5 Republican seats, the pressure on Virginia Democrats to respond becomes nearly irresistible, regardless of what 65.7% of their own voters chose in 2020. So they're disregarding our votes, folks. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They're acting out of pure emotion. These are emotional fucking shitbags, man. It's fucking insane. So as early voting begins March 6th and Virginians head to a special April 21 referendum, potentially the first statewide ballot measure ever held in April, mind you, early voting. There you go. You know it's gonna fucking, oh my God. Early voting needs to be done away with. Gone. Out the fucking window. Early voting, mail-in voting, all that shit needs to be gone. We need voter IDs, and you need one day to vote. You either go or you fucking don't. And if you can't read, write, or even distinguish what a Republican or Democrat is, then you probably shouldn't fucking vote. And definitely shouldn't be voting if you are an illegal alien or illegal immigrant, whatever the hell you want to call it. The Virginia Supreme Court holds the ultimate power. It may rule the entire process unconstitutional after voters have already cast ballots, which would be the constitutional thing to do. Or it may allow Virginia to join the growing list of states where politicians, not voters, choose their representatives. Either way, the Commission Virginia voters created in 2020, imperfect as it was, produced fairer maps than any politician of either party ever drew. Ever. That fact should weigh heavy on whatever comes next. That fact should weigh heavily on whatever comes next, folks. Heavily. So, I'm going to leave you with today with a simple message of common sense. And I've said it throughout this whole entire episode. Two wrongs don't make a right. If you don't like what someone else is doing, you don't stoop to their level. If someone does you wrong, you think that you've been done wrong, you don't stoop to that person's level and do the same fucking thing. What does that say about you? And maybe if the fucking Democrats, if that's even what they are anymore, I would argue they're fucking socialist communist is the direction they're heading in. They have no voter base. Their top runner for the 2028 election is at 19%. His own party doesn't even want him there. Because he's shit. Look how he's run California. That's just a preview of how he would run the fucking country. Set it on fucking fire. And provide no water. And it's insane that people are fucking falling for this shit. Like, yeah, no side is perfect. But when you have a clear side that is completely against America, that is not for America or Americans, and you yet still have people fighting for these folks, I don't get it. How much logic do you fucking need? How much more of a clear picture do you need? If you watched the State of the Union address last week, you would have seen that the entire Democratic Party does not want to put American needs first. That is a huge red flag. They could not even stand in unison for the American people. It is absolutely absurd and disgusting and treasonous. It literally made me sick to my fucking stomach to see that. I don't want these people fucking running my country. Are you insane? You've got to be insane to fucking want these people to run your country. They're not for the country. They are systematically trying to bring this country to its fucking knees from within. Just look at Ilhan Omar. Look at what she's done. Look at Tim Walz. Look what the fuck he's done. Look what Abigail Scamberger's doing. She's scamming us, folks. She's scamming us. And all of you that voted for her, she is definitely scamming your ass. So, you got what you wanted. You got what you wanted. And I hope you're fucking happy with it, folks. Because I sure as hell didn't vote for her, I can tell you that much. But anyways, I'm going to leave it here today, folks. I'm already behind on schedule as it is, big time. So, I gotta go. I'll catch you folks on the next one. It's Roby with the Manufactured Mind. Hope everybody has a good day. Peace out. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.